Did you ever want to get into tail dragger warbirds, but something like this happened? This vid is dedicated to you. Shatter your landing gear while landing like a meteor guy. Maybe you tried your best, but you still had a few mishaps. It's okay. Everyone makes mistakes, and I'm here to see if I can help you improve your warbird landings. Chapter 1. Warbirds are airplanes, and airplanes are not monster trucks. There's a growing meme in the RC aviation community that an airplane sucks if its gear can't handle being slammed into the ground in places it was never meant to fly. And this kind of thinking is asinine. Airplanes are fragile by nature. They have to be lightweight to fly. They aren't monster trucks with wings. This means that you have to set the plane down with purpose and the intent to not destroy it. Yes, this means you have to fly it all the way down to the ground, watching for the sink rate and arresting the descent with throttle while constantly adjusting the trajectory of the plane to ensure that it tracks on a smooth, stabilized approach. Let's begin with the basics of a stabilized approach. I've covered this before in other videos on how to land, but the basic idea is that you maintain as smooth of a line to the ground as is possible, given the conditions that you're flying in. Turbulence will always be a factor on a windy day, but if you can keep the track of the plane relatively smooth with no abrupt changes in airspeed, pitch, yaw, or roll, you can generally ensure that the landing won't get fudged at the last second. Getting a solid, stabilized approach isn't as hard as it seems. My best advice here is to be as light on the controls as you can and observe the plane's reaction to everything that you do. Over-control leads to pilot-induced oscillations, or PO for short, and PO leads to crashing, which leads to an expensive repair bill. Avoid PO by being light on the controls and being aware of what you're doing at all times. When it comes to technique, there's a few approaches that you can take. I'll focus on landing while trading altitude for airspeed first. The basic technique here is to bank in to land in front of yourself, with gear and flaps dropped while pushing the nose down. The idea here is to trade altitude for airspeed up until the model begins to level out. Then you add enough throttle to stay level as you pull the elevator and touch the mains. If you're doing a touch and go like I am here, you maintain the throttle level and keep the plane tracking with rudder input. Then you throttle up and take off again. If you're coming in to land, you let the tail drop as airspeed bleeds off and keep it as straight as possible on the ground. You don't have to be perfect at this technique for it to work well. If you watch my stick inputs, you'll see how easy it is here. All you need to do is ensure that the nose is pointed in the direction of the turn and keep the throttle low while you're letting the plane descend. It sounds counterintuitive to newer pilots, but it's basic physics. Losing altitude will create a net gain in airspeed. You don't want much if any throttle until the plane levels out and needs to fight gravity to stay in the air. This is why you see me throttling up right before touchdown. The added thrust arrests the descent rate and keeps the gear and plane from being damaged. Another aspect to landing that a lot of people struggle with is confidence, and this is something that I talk about frequently in tutorial content. Confidence and managing anxiety are both major keys to becoming a better pilot. If you want to learn how to fly better, you need to learn how to train your brain to avoid being afraid of it. Confidence comes from getting better at what you're doing. Managing anxiety comes from repeating what you do successfully until your brain's amygdala no longer releases adrenaline in response to flying. Contrary to popular opinion, flying doesn't have to be nerve-wracking. The more you do it, the better you get at it, and eventually you no longer fear it, but rather enjoy it and look forward to it. I used to be stressed out on maiden flight days or when landing in turbulent winds. Now I really don't even freak out if a plane is headed right at my face. You're more likely to make mistakes when you're trembling with adrenaline. So, let's recap the major points here. You're looking for a smooth, stabilized approach. You're going to trade altitude for airspeed. You're going to level out and add throttle before touchdown. Then you'll carry the aircraft through the ground roll with rudder and keep it tracking straight. Then throttle up and rotate around to try it again. Touch and go practice is the best way to get over your anxiety and confidence issues. I've personally mentored many people with touch and go practice by instilling these same concepts into them. If I can do it, and so can they, it follows that you can too. If we can land on this 17-foot wide strip of crappy pavement every single time, imagine how much better your landings will be with taking this advice to heart. Speaking of advice, we occasionally get snarky comments from people who insist that we don't know what we're doing because we use a gyro, barring the fact that both the Viper jet in the on-screen comment and the P-47 both come with gyros, factory stock. So here's us landing with the gyro disabled to prove a point. Yes, we can land without it. No, it's not enjoyable in turbulent winds. The point of having a gyro for most people is to stabilize the airframe in turbulence because it reacts faster than is humanly possible, especially at the airport I fly at, which is notorious for wind shear and strong rotor turbulence. I use a gyro to protect my airframes from being damaged with wing scrapes and to stabilize them when I make them intentionally tail heavy. Use what you enjoy. If you don't like using a gyro, don't, but stop being a dick to people who use one. Even the best gyro doesn't fly for you. Notice how you never hear full-scale fighter pilots being denigrated because their airframes come with a computer that translates their stick input into control surface deflections. Phew. Anyhow, another technique you can use to land your warbird, assuming it behaves like the P-47, is a slip. Using rudder, you can present more of the airframe to the oncoming air, slowing the plane down at the cost of significant drag. This works really well if you're flying in an area surrounded by tall trees or other obstacles. You can use a slip to bring the airplane down in challenging areas without crashing, but it'll take a lot of cross control to get it done right, and if you're new to flying, you'll want to practice it higher up to avoid stalling it into the ground. Slips are a great way to get your stick and rudder practice in, and as long as you're maintaining airspeed in a slip by either descending or using conservative amounts of throttle, you have nothing to fear. Rudder is one of the most potent control inputs that you have as a pilot, and if you're afraid of using it, I would suggest familiarizing yourself with it and getting used to it. Rudder should be your best friend while flying. It's super powerful and you're cheating yourself out of all the utility that it provides if you only bank and yank. You drop altitude faster in a slip when you roll the airplane, and leveling the wings reduces the descent rate. You'll want to keep the nose pointed down at all times because the reduction in airspeed requires regaining it somehow, and it's easier to control the airplane by gaining that airspeed with a reduction in altitude instead of using throttle, which will make you overshoot the landing, making the entire point of slipping in useless. This can be tricky for a lot of pilots, but I'll loop back to confidence. The more you do it, the easier it gets. Practice makes perfect. The more you practice a slipped approach, the better they'll get and the easier you'll find them to perform. Slips should be considered a vital part of your toolkit, and to recap, you'll want to add large amounts of rudder to initiate the slip. Roll the plane to begin dropping altitude quickly. Keep the nose pointed to the ground. Let off the rudder while leveling the wings and land as usual. And that's really all there is to it. You can see all of the stick movements and play them back in slow-mo using YouTube's playback options. If you ever have any questions or ever want any help, leave us a comment or join our Discord server. Our community is vibrant and loves helping each other out. Thanks for watching, and let us know what you thought. The best slipped landing posted to our Discord server will win a free Two Brothers sticker of your choice. See you guys next time.